To take part in Hajj, Muslims should be sane, reasonably healthy and able to provide for their families while they are away. Muslim women must be accompanied either by their husbands or a man they are legally unable to marry, such as their father or brother. Women can also go as part of specially organised groups. Each year, about 20,000 British Muslims perform Hajj.
When you arrive in Saudi Arabia, you enter a state of ihram, which means that there are certain prohibitions that you have to observe. And the men are dressed in 2 white sheets. The women wear just their normal clean clothes. And then you proceed to Mecca, where you make circumambulation of the holy house of God, the Kaaba. After staying in Mecca for a few days, then you travel out to the valley of Mina. And this is really the time for Hajj, when you go out to Mina. You stay there for one night, and then you go to a large place called the Plain of Arafat. And this is the most important and key significant day of Hajj. If you miss Arafat, you've missed your Hajj.
Here in the UK, it's estimated there's about 2 million Muslims.
When I heard the word Muslim in Islam, I think of Far Eastern Asia and what's been on the news recently.
Don't know much about it at all.
A section of my student population, I suppose.
It's estimated there are 1.2 billion Muslims around the world. And most of them are outside the Middle East, sometimes to be found in countries such as America, where by 2010, Islam will become the second largest religion.
The sects that came into Islam came as a result of political disputes. After the death of the Prophet, there was a dispute amongst the Muslims who should succeed him.
It's not that we're talking about 2 separate communities and never the twain will meet at all. That's not the case at all. In fact, the way to imagine it is to imagine a pie chart with 2 circles that overlap, and there is so much similarity between some members of these groups, and there are differences as well.
I want you to come on. What should our response be? What did you say? What did you say?
There are people who call themselves Muslims, but many other Muslims may not in fact regard them as part of Islam, such as the Ahmadiyya and the Nation of Islam. People argue that they have beliefs which are not acceptable to the majority of Muslims. Now, there is also a trend in the Muslim world, which is the Sufi. Sufism or mysticism is an attitude that actually cuts across all the schools of thought. So you find Sufis amongst the Shia, you find Sufis amongst the Sunnis, you find Sufis amongst everyone.
The concept of jihad has come to be understood as holy war, but really it means striving to serve God.
Jihad took a wider meaning in Islam, and the Prophet ﷺ pointed out that jihad starts with yourself. That means you actually struggle and strive against your inclinations to do the wrong things.
One of the biggest personal struggles required in Islam is a constant search for knowledge.
It is compulsory to every Muslim male and female to seek knowledge. Every time you wear a spectacle, you must remember the man, Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, the father of optics. Can you imagine the world without having the Arabic numerals that we use today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is Arabic numerals. The Latin numerals that we have, I, X, L, and you couldn't possibly have made any serious mathematical calculations. Many symbols in astronomy, there are hundreds and hundreds of stars that we use today that are originally in Arabic language. See, what I'm holding in my hand is the most sophisticated computer of those days. It's like having a Pentium 4 laptop hanging on the wall. This is an astrolabe. For instance, in here you point this towards the sun and you make sure that the light passes through 2 pinholes and that will give you the location of where you are. So it's like your GPS system today using satellites. Look at any book, the first 4 or 5 pages, they tell us about Pythagoras, Archimedes, Aristotle, Gallienus and so on. And then there is a gap for about 1,000 years. We're told that 1,000 years was the Dark Ages. The world was living in complete darkness. Was Europe living in darkness? There is about 1,000 years missing, science history. And that is the history of Muslims.
The growth of Islam around the world has led to clashes with other faiths and cultures, the biggest one being the Crusades.
The Crusades were launched by people in Europe, by a particular Pope in Europe, with the aim of wresting the Jerusalem from the Muslims. These people conquered Palestine and Jerusalem very easily because the Muslim world was as divided as it is now. They considered that the Muslims were not human beings. They murdered 70,000 people. And according to their own chronicles, their horses waded up to their knees in the blood of the Saracens, or the Muslims, as they called them. Now, they controlled Jerusalem for 90 years. Afterwards, they were expelled, and gradually they were defeated after something like 200 years.
As widespread as the faith is, there's no longer a leader in the Islamic world. Many different cultures across the world have influenced Islam. So if you didn't know the difference between your ayatollahs and your imams, check this out. Obviously, in Britain, UK law applies, but the Muslims have their own law, which is called the Sharia.
If you study Muslim law or the Sharia, you begin by the laws governing your acts of worship, your relationship with God. That has to be essential element of your study. And then the law of contract, the law of marriage and divorce, the law of the penal code, virtually every aspect of what you may call law is covered by the Sharia.
I find it very difficult to cope with the idea that women have to be covered up.
They think women are second-class citizens.
They cover them up and stuff like that, which I think is a little bit harsh. They should show their beauty.